You're listening to Thursday Night AMP on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Thursday Night AngryMarks.com Pro Wrestling and Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. There's a guy named CM Punk who had a fight last week, but there was an even bigger fight in the main event of New Japan's Dominion card, and we may all get into a fight over whether or not we want to watch Money in the Bank on Sunday, but we also have a special guest joining us, and before I can introduce him, I need to introduce my co-host, starting with Mr. William Huckabee.
What's going on, people? This has been a great week for not only professional wrestling, but for professional wrestling fans in general. Like, this has been the week to end all weeks, man. I'm so excited about tonight's show.
Yeah, it's going to be a barn burner, just like that entire Dominion card was. That was one hell of an event in Osaka Joe Hall, and I think Jason Arland, a.k.a. the Great Sudoku, would agree with that.
In 2018, Angry Marks is Golden Elite.
Well, I wouldn't compare us to that. I mean, we do have a pretty good trio here between you, me, and Will, but I don't think we're the Golden Elite.
We're on board with the Golden Elite.
That one I would grant you.
I'm pretty sure we could beat them in Street Fighter 5.
Maybe. I'd have to polish up my skills on it a little bit. I only just got the game a few months ago, and I don't know if I'm tournament ready for it, but...
I can murk any of them in VPW2 on N64.
Oh, that reminds me. There is something about Fire Pro Wrestling I want to discuss later on, but first we need to bring in our special guest, so I'm calling him right now as we speak. Hello, Joey.
Yo!
Mr. Joey Eastman.
What's up?
Hey, it's Stevie J. Long time no talk.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time.
Absolutely. In fact, it's been so long that I've had several new co-hosts in the span of time since the last time we talked to you. So let me introduce you to the two that are joining me tonight. William Huckabee, say hello to Joey Eastman.
What's going on, Chief, man? How you doing? I'm the resident wrestler in charge here, the only actual professional wrestler in the group.
Okay, alright.
And he had a hiatus from AngryMarks.com, but he's been back as a regular for a few years now, so he might have been here the first time you were around. It's the Great Sudoku, Jason Harland.
Hey, Joey, yeah, I was wondering that if I was around the last time you were on, because it's been, like, decades, but I am back, and I'm the resident WWE hater, and New Japan is awesome person here.
Okay, so we're gonna get along terribly.
Awesome.
Because dude, I try to watch New Japan and, like, I appreciate everything. Like, it's great. I don't know. I just love stories and I love the big entertainment factor.
Well, there is definitely big entertainment in Dominion this past weekend, but before we even go to that subject, I want to give everybody a little bit of a crash course since it has been so long since you've been here. I mean, I could jump right into Limitless Wrestling and your podcast and all the things that I keep up on you doing currently, but let's rewind the clock a little bit and reintroduce yourself to our listeners in how you got into professional wrestling.
Yeah, I was smoking a cigarette. I was in the Navy, so this was 2003. Actually, June 23rd, 2003, I was like behind the building smoking a cigarette, and the promoter, who was also like a heel manager, he says, I just asked him, hey, what are you doing tonight? And he's like, I have to freaking ring announce, and I don't want to. So I said, I'd do it. He let me do it, and then there was like another group of promoters in the crowd that were all sitting together. They didn't have a ring announcer. I guess nobody was a ring announcer in Chicago in 2003. So I got like 3 bookings from that one booking, and the rest is history. Like, I started training in '04, and it was the sky's the limit after that.
Oh, of course, but even before you got that break and became ring announcer and manager and wrestling personality extraordinaire, as I like to refer to you, you had to be, a pro wrestling fan coming into it to even want to do that.
Oh, you have no idea. Like, when I started watching wrestling, my dad used to watch the A-Team. And it was the A-Team, and then WWF Superstars was right after that. And there was a lead-in with Mr. T. And, they were geniuses to know to do that. So my dad watched, like, the first 3 minutes of wrestling and then left the room. But, oh my God, I was, like, stuck there. It was King Kong Bundy was there, and then that was, 85-ish? And then there was wrestling in where I grew up, New Bedford, Massachusetts, and it was, the local indie group, but they would run every Saturday. And in 1988, I actually went to my first indie show where the main event was Iron Mike Sharp against Special Delivery Jones.
Awesome.
Yeah, and if you thought it was bad on TV, man, I could just imagine how that match was. But they were TV stars, and I was, 7, 8 years old, so, yeah, it was the coolest thing.
Well, that's part of the reason you and I have always hit it off, is because I come from that exact same era where I got into it watching AWA at my grandpa's house and then WWF Superstars on the local affiliate channel in my home area. It was like Sunday morning at 10 a.m. because it was syndicated, so I couldn't get it like regular television following A-Team or whatever, but I still got to see it, and I still enjoyed the hell out of it, and I had no idea how much bigger the wrestling world was at the time, because I didn't have cable, so I didn't even know about NWA and WCW and all these other things. I'm jealous of these guys that are on the show with me growing up with that stuff that I didn't get to see.
No, yeah, it's 100% true. Like, I used to get out of school and run home because at 3 and 4 o'clock, it was Texas wrestling at 3 and then Vern Gagne at 4. So I was always like, wait a minute, why isn't Sergeant Slaughter wrestling Michael P.S. Hayes? Like, that match would be awesome. I didn't get it, I didn't know that they were territories. I didn't know I just knew that there was wrestling, and I watched 2 hours of wrestling every single day before my dad got home and wanted to watch the news and drink like 40 beers.
Well, yes. Now we've had the territories come and go, but I think in their place what we've seen is the rise of indie promotions, because now crisscrossing the country, there are scores of independent promotions that have risen up that are providing quality professional wrestling outside of the stuff that you can see on television.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, I am so lucky that I came in '03 when I did, because I got to be with the Punks, I got to be with the Cabanas. Like, I got to see these guys who were traveling the country, and like, you would read their name all over, in a weekend. They were in Philly, they were in Louisville, they were in Milwaukee on Sunday, and I'm like, I want to do that. Like, that's the guy that I wanted to be. And I asked them, I'm like, what do I have to do? And they just said, just jump in the car and go. Like, that's it. There's no guarantee. You're going to lose so much money. And I'm in the Navy at the time, so I'm getting off duty. I was stationed in Great Lakes, Illinois. I'm getting off duty, and I'm jumping in a car, and I'm going to Milwaukee on Friday. And then Saturday, I'm down for, IWA in Ulitic, Indiana, which is like 5-6 hours away from Chicago. And then back up to do a show in Chicago or the suburbs on Sunday, because that's what I thought you had to do.
And I think that's where you and I first crossed paths, actually. It was an IWA Mid-South Ted Petty Invitational, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think it was '04, right? Like, that, to me, I still hold, if you guys haven't seen TPI 04, it was still the best wrestling weekend that I've ever seen, like that I've ever been a part of. Every single match, and I still have my TPI 04 t-shirt that I'm way too fat to wear now, but man, I still have it. I can't bring myself to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just the lure of it on the internet. The reputation for TPI was so large. Everybody talked about, like, the three greatest events that you could go to in indie wrestling back then were ECWA Super 8, Ted Petty Invitational, and the Battle of Los Angeles. And I thought, well, there's at least one of those three that I could actually drive to, so I'm going.
Yeah, you can hit one of them. So, and that was essentially the same. And then, like, the deathmatch people, they love their Tournament of Death. Like, that's still, I guess CZW had a great turnout this weekend for it. So, like, there were those big tournaments. Like, I never really got into the whole deathmatch thing. I'm like, that's like cutting yourself. But, there's definitely a market for it, and I totally appreciate what those guys do.
Oh, no, and we respect those guys, too. I've had Matt Tremont on the show, and I'm like, dude, I understand you love what you're doing, but I also worry about your health. How long can you do this? And he's like, when I can't do it anymore, I'll know.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like they're going out there and they're killing themselves, and that's why Necro Butcher doesn't get a 20-year run, like he put it in for those few years and that was it. There's this one dude that I'm enamored with how he looks, Schlack. Like, he just looks like he can kill everyone. And that's pro wrestling to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Necro Butcher always gave me that impression, too. When I saw him at those TPI shows, I was like, the legends are true. This man looks like a psycho, and he just stapled a dollar bill to somebody's forehead. He's nuts.
Yeah, Necro was awesome, and I guess, like, from what I last heard, Necro's like a millionaire now. From DraftKings, so good for him if that's true. Even if that story's not true, I want that story to be really, really true.
If it's not, I would hope it's royalties from sales of the wrestler, one or the other.
Yeah, really, like anything to give that. I saw a picture of him at the Kentucky Derby, and he's like clean shape. He looks clean, and he looks like a dad now. So something good had to happen to Necro.
I hope so too. That's a fantastic story, because it's hard for me to picture a Necro Butcher wearing a suit and tie and looking dapper at the Kentucky Derby. But if he is,
yeah, he was wearing one of those weird hat things that like they wear at the Kentucky Derby, and I'm like, that's fucking Necro. Come on, man.
That is awesome. Now I'm gonna have to do some research after the show is over and find that picture, but let's get back to what you're up to these days, because as I already alluded to, you've been doing some work in Limitless Wrestling. You've got a hot podcast out there that everybody should be listening to. Tell everybody the stuff that Joey Eastman is doing in the present day.
Well, I mean, if nobody watches Chikara, there's this jerk named Sidney Bacabella at Chikara, and, I mean, for a few years, people had no idea that it was me, and it was the greatest thing. Like, I bought a wig, I grew a mustache, and it was awesome. So Sidney Bacabella is definitely the greatest thing I will ever do in wrestling. I have so much fun with him. Like, he is just a carny from the 80s, and it's so much fun. Limitless Wrestling, I actually started working there as Sidney, and the promoters, like, when I was a little kid, I hated you so much. And he's like, I would love for Joey Eastman to be on the shows, and I'm like, I can't even fit in the suits anymore that I used to wear, let alone do half of the things, but let me think on it, let me think how Joey Eastman would be in wrestling in 2018, and I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, I've got to be an overbearing dad, exactly what I am to my son now. So that's what I do, and it's a lot of fun. Like, it's so different from, what I've been doing for the last 6 years as Sidney, and it's crazy.
I wasn't going to outright say your work in Chikara, because I didn't know if you were pulling back the veil on that, because one time when I did interview you about it, you were like, Sidney, who's that? And you were just totally kayfabing it, so. Yeah,
at the beginning of the gimmick, I really thought it would be, I wanted it to be my Andy Kaufman, Tony Clifton. And, unfortunately, what I didn't realize was that Andy Kaufman was doing this in the early 80s before the internet. So as soon as I see online that everybody already knows it's me and they're playing along with the gag, now I'm just treating the fan base like they're idiots. And I'm, so everybody knows it's me, but I try to be so different all the time that, maybe for that 3 minutes or 6 minutes that I'm out there, you don't know that Sydney is Joey, Joey is Sydney. And I try to keep them, when I have the wig and the mustache, I am a completely different person.
Well, since we're talking about Chikara right now, I would say it's along the lines of Archibald Peck, R.D. Evans, and Mixed Martial Archie. Each one of those is a distinct character that you really can't confuse for the other, even though they're all the same person.
Yeah, and Robert was amazing at that. And I used to pick Robert's brain when I was starting with the Sydney gimmick. What can I do to not be Joey? Like, I want to be Sydney. And he gave great advice. He's like, you really need to embrace this character. Like, if somebody asks you a question, don't answer it as Joey being Sydney. Answer it as Sydney would answer it. And I really, really stuck to that. And if you book Sydney Bacabella, you get Sydney Bacabella from the time I get out of the car until the time I get back into the car. Everybody knows it's Joey, but you booked Sydney, so, you've got to get Sydney. Like, to the point where if I'm on a flight, I am wearing, something from the 80s, whether it's my pants. I try not to wear Zubaz anymore because everybody wears Zubaz. So, like, I got some Z Cavaricis that I'll wear. I'll wear the fanny pack. Like, I'll put the mascara in my mustache before I go to the airport. Like, I am Sydney Bacabella at the airport, everywhere I go, just to really, really get into that character.
See, I look at it the exact same way when I see Samoa Joe on TV. I mean, we all know that he's Joe Sayanoa in real life, but he's not that person when he shows up in Ring of Honor or TNA or WWE. Like, before he got to the building, he turned into Samoan Joe, the badass angry Samoan who will kill you if you look at him the wrong way. He embraced that character before he even got to the building.
And that's what, I don't know, I really feel like that's sort of what sets me apart from a lot of other managers. I was told, like, hey, don't just be a guy in a suit. Like, really be a wrestling manager. And with Joey Eastman, I was a dude in a suit that was trying to be Jim Cornette, essentially. And then as Sydney Bacabella, I really got to embrace that because I was way more mature in wrestling. And I was able to say, hey, it's not about trying to be the next Jim Cornette. Be Sydney Bacabella. And it's just helped me so much. And, my schedule's full, so it must be doing something right.
Absolutely. And we're going to come back to that schedule in just a minute, but I don't want to totally dominate the conversation since I have two co-hosts, and one of them is, as he already stated, the resident professional wrestler. So, Mr. William Huckabee, what would you like to ask Joey Eastman?
Well, first of all, Joey, like I said once before, thanks for being a guest on the show and stuff.
Yeah.
My first thing is that, right now, I'm a resident of North Carolina. I live in the South, and I do some traveling up to the Northeast and stuff. But, Massachusetts in that area, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, the Connecticut area, like that place is really blowing up when it comes to, indie wrestling and stuff, when it comes to really good quality wrestling promotions. Not only Limitless, but you have Beyond Wrestling, a couple other companies as well. What do you attest that to? What do you think is the reason behind so much great quality indie wrestling that's coming out of Massachusetts and the Northeast in general?
There's one school there's like 1 million schools in the Northeast, but there's one where all of these guys are coming from. The New England Pro Wrestling Academy, which, they have Brian Fury as the owner and the head trainer, but then you have a bunch of really awesome guys that are training there. I know, Scott Guerin, who worked as Max Smashmaster, in Chikara. He stepped away from the ring. He had a kid. So he's like, yeah, I don't want to do wrestling anymore. Like, I want to be healthy for my son. But he gets to give back every week when he goes to that school and runs his class. You have Johnny Vegas, who nobody knows. unless you're from the Northeast. Johnny Vegas has been working, I would say he's probably been wrestling for 172 years. And he's only 40 some odd years older. He's gonna kill me if he heard me say 50s. But Johnny Vegas is entertainment. Like, he was a very good wrestler, but he became a great worker because he got the entertainment part over everything else. You have Chase Del Monte, who's training there, and all those guys like the Josh Briggses, the Anthony Greens, all those guys are coming from that school. And then you got the really positive people in the area like the Bob Evans and, people like that who've been around. So the vets, and that might be another really good thing, is that a lot of the vets are still active up here in the Northeast. So guys that were working 20 years ago that picked up tips from their vets are still working matches in 2018, and that's such a huge thing up here.
Like I've noticed, because there's a couple of people that you mentioned that I have personal interactions with. I've had a match with Josh Briggs, who, while being very green, had so much skill and unlimited potential. The kid was wrestling 4 to 5 days a week, and of course, Brutal Bob Evans, who's like wrestling's favorite uncle and stuff.
Yeah.
My next question for you is this: breaking in, because I'm not going to hold it against you that you're in the Navy, because I'm an Army vet, so I'm not going to hold that against you. The fact that you're a Navy and you're a Yankee, like, I'm not even going to hold that against you. But breaking into the wrestling business in the Great Lakes area and stuff, and working the Chicago, Minnesota, Indiana scene and stuff, and then going back to Massachusetts, was it a culture shock as far as wrestling goes?
Yeah, it was. That's one of. I had a really big learning curve when I came out here. Out in the Midwest, I would, drive up to Milwaukee from Great Lakes, and I would train with Carmine DeSpirito, and then before shows, guys like Beer City Bruiser and Silas Young were teaching me how to bump and do all that to be a manager, but I was working a lot with Carmine. And then when I moved to the East Coast, when I was out in the Midwest, everything was called for me. Hey, grab the foot here, I'm gonna make eye contact and, hit the rope, you grab the foot. When I moved out to the East Coast, there was a guy named Jeff Costa who worked as Lobster Man. Him and another vet, Maverick Wild, they were the school that I went to. My apartment was like 8 blocks from the school, so I was there every Monday and Wednesday. So when I started working shows for them, it was, why didn't you grab the foot? And I'm like, well, you didn't tell me to grab the foot. And they really broke down working on the fly. Like knowing where to be, knowing positioning, and just knowing that I didn't need anything called for me. And for a while, I sucked because I'm like, I don't know, is this where I go or is not? And then I just got it after a while. Like after about 4 months of working up here and working with those guys twice a week and then on shows, it was like, okay, I know what to do now. So now I feel like I can work either way. Like if now I work with a lot of green guys, so they need to call everything. But when I get in there with a lot of the guys that don't call stuff, I can work that way too, and I'm far more comfortable working that way now than I am calling anything, because I forget absolutely everything.
I think the forgetting everything just happens with time, because I'm the same way. It's like I'd much rather just, call a hot beginning, call a really hot finish, and then let's just see where the road takes us in the middle. And eventually we'll find our way to the finish.
Yes, it teaches you to feel the crowd too. Instead of having a match for us, let's entertain the people that just spent their $20 to watch us, and the match comes off, it gets a better reaction.
Yeah. My last question before I pass it to my other co-host, as a manager and stuff, and now on the independents and even in, WWE and stuff and New Japan and everything else, we're seeing a serious lack of actual managers. You have Paul Heyman, and that's really about it when it comes to managers, actual managers and stuff. Do you think that professional wrestling is doing itself a great disservice by not utilizing managers more, especially when it comes to guys who are green, who may have a good look and can't talk, and guys who may be right there on the cusp of being in the main event, but they're just horrible on the mic and they need something extra that they're lacking?
It's such a tough question because, on one hand, of course they're doing a disservice. Like, there should be managers. But a lot of times, when you look at managers, they're just like a friend of the promoter, and they're going out there and they're not getting the right kind of heat. So it's really hard for the WWE to call upon any managers because a lot of them, A, aren't trained, B, they're just like, the town drunk that, paid, or they want to raffle to manage somebody. I see that now too, and I'm like, you're killing my business. But, then there are also great managers that could go there. Guys like, there's a dude up here, Marshall McNeil. They're so, like, Stokely Hathaway, I feel he's going to go to the WWE. Like, we're all gonna see Stokely Hathaway, and I will have a smile bigger than anyone else. Just knowing how hard that dude worked and the shit that he went through to get there. So I can't wait for that because that dude is so talented. But in the WWE, they have such a great system down there where they can teach a guy to be his own manager and go out there and cut his own promos because you have managers down there teaching them how to do that. And you have the best wrestlers in the world. So a lot of these guys, while, they need a manager, they really don't need a manager. They just need somebody to tell them what to do and do the wrestling by numbers, and they will get it and get over with the crowd because they have the greats teaching them.
Well, I'm going to pass it over to our co-host, the great Sudoku, Jason. Jason, what do you have for our guest tonight?
Well, first I want to say that we have something in common as we both got introduced to wrestling through ESPN with AWA and World Class. I would come home from middle school and, I was a latchkey kid. Parents were at work. They hated wrestling. They didn't want me watching wrestling. So, of course, I'm going to watch wrestling when they're not there. And there are two things that I take away, one from each promotion. I'll tell you what those are, then I'll ask what your big takeaways from each one were. World Class was kind of my first introduction. I didn't know it at the time, what it was, but what I would call it now was strong style, where a match could end with a clothesline, and that was it, or a suplex. There weren't finishers per se. It just looked very real. That's really what I liked about World Class. AWA was kind of the opposite. It was so hokey. There were no baby faces that I liked except for the Rockers for the cup of coffee they had. And like when they bring Mondo Guerrero in, AWA did a wonderful job of making cool heels like the Destruction Crew and Bad Company and just the Road Warriors. They were just so much better than the baby faces. Commentary was so pro babyface, and by the time the Team Challenge series rolled around, that is what broke in my head that, you know what, this is all fake. That's when kayfabe went out the window for me when they're like, yeah, we're having these matches in this locked room because there's too much fan interference. And I'm like, even the 12-year-old me was like, yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Like, AWA, I watched it because Slaughter was on it and I love G.I. Joe. So I would watch for Sergeant Slaughter, but then I was a big, and I'm so embarrassed saying this, but Greg Gagne was awesome because he was Vern Gagne's son. Now looking back, I'm like,
no.
I know, but dude, you're talking to like a 7-year-old kid. Like, I know that Greg Gagne was god awful now, but man, as a kid, because his dad was Vern Gagne, I really liked him, and yet I was not a fan of Nick Bockwinkel. I thought he was boring. I thought he was... Yeah.
He was old by the time ESPN rolled around. I used to love the aftermags where they would, kayfabe have guys like Larry Hennig trashing him, and it's like, I was thinking the same thing that this kayfabe Larry Hennig quote said, that he's old and he's over the hill and he's washed up and he shouldn't be champion. I'm like, that's exactly what I'm thinking when I'm watching these matches.
Yeah, it was so true. But I didn't know how old they were. I just knew that he was boring to me. Looking back now, I'm like, holy, wow, Nick Bockwinkel was absolutely amazing. And, now that I'm an adult, I can say that. But there were always heels that scared me as a kid. And Texas and the AWA each had one. The AWA was Baron von Raschke for me. I was genuinely afraid of the Baron when he would make that face where he would do the thing with his eye, where he would squint the one eye and open the other one really big and do the claw motion. I was afraid of the Baron. And then in Texas, and to this day, there is no scarier wrestler to me than Kabuki. Like,
I love Kabuki. He was what made me a wrestling fan for life.
Yeah.
That green mist was the coolest thing. I was never scared of Kabuki. I wanted to be Kabuki's apprentice. I wanted to be the great Kabuki when I grew up.
Oh, I was terrified. See, my favorite down in Texas, and it's awesome because I got to pass this along to my son, who it's now one of his favorites, is Kamala. I love Kamala. I love the character. I love the gimmick. I love the work.
Did I lose you guys?
Oh.
No, you're here. You're still here.
All right. Sorry about that. I kicked the cord, but I love Kamala. The big differences for me was Texas seemed like a fight.
Yes.
It seemed real. They really hated each other. Whereas the AWA, it seemed like the guys that weren't on the WWF anymore, and they went over to the AWA.
That was another thing that kind of ruined kayfabe for me when they said AWA, the Major League of Professional Wrestling. Right, these are WWF cast-offs.
Yes. When I saw the Iron Sheik show up there, I knew that the AWA was second rate.
See, my perception of it actually ended up being like AWA was the feeder system for WWF, because I would watch AWA on my grandpa's satellite dish, and then a few years later these guys would show up on WWF Superstars. I was like, wait a minute, I know these guys, they were in AWA. I guess they got bought out by the bigger company, they got signed to a bigger deal.
Pat Tanaka finally got his big calling. Yes! And that is a good way to look at it. I don't know. I always saw empty seats when I watched the AWA too. I never saw that with Texas. I never saw that.
Oh, the Sportatorium was packed, even after it went to whatever that was, Global Wrestling. Yeah. It was still packed then.
Which, by the way, Global, some of the worst, they had so many awesome people, that became amazing, performers in wrestling. But my God, watching it.
And then there was Jeff Gaylord, who never was.
Dude, no. The worst was Tugboat Taylor's kid, Chaz the Teenage Heartthrob. So, you're going through wrestling school and you're like, what am I? I'm a teenage heartthrob. What's my name? Chaz. My wrestling name? I'm Chaz the Teenage Heartthrob. That's me. And nobody told him it was a bad idea. His dad's Tugboat Taylor. Tell your kid that is a terrible idea.
Yeah. It is amazing when you look at Global and the names that went through there, like Steve Austin and Mick Foley, and yet they weren't superstars at that time, and they would never be superstars in that promotion because they weren't used the way superstars would be.
Yeah, it was Austin was ready. Austin left there and went to the NWA and WCW, and the rest is history. But a lot of those guys, that's what they had to do back then. I'm pretty sure Ahmed Johnson was in there for a while too, which always blows my mind that Ahmed Johnson wrestled anywhere before the WWF. That just blows my mind.
And Harlem Heat, before Booker T was a big worldwide superstar, he was in Global as well with his brother.
Yes, he was. Bradshaw was down there. It was, looking back at it, I can't watch it, but man, it was, and they did a rocket to the moon match, or where they were on bungee cords and trying to run.
Yes.
God.
That's been inducted on WrestleCrap. That's one of my favorite articles on that site.
Oh my God, could you imagine paying money? It reminds me of a great story of Jeff Lobsterman up here, where he was promoting a match in 3D. And he only did it because he bought a bunch of those paper 3D glasses at a flea market. So he advertises that his match against Captain USA was going to be in 3D. And he charged $10 for the ticket, $2 extra for the glasses, that he bought a box of them for 50 cents. And all he did was hang a strobe light above the ring and say, I'm coming right at you. And people paid for that, just like the bungee cord match.
Well, if you can get people to pay for it, it works. That's the oldest rule of the book. As long as people are paying to see it, you did something right.
That's right. He's the ultimate carny. I love it.
But I want to address something that Jason brought up, which I think is a good segue. He mentioned how Texas felt real, and you mentioned how Texas, it looked like a fight. And I think that's part of the reason we became all huge supporters of New Japan at some point. Me a little more recently than my co-host, but when you watch New Japan Pro Wrestling as compared to WWE, sometimes WWE it looks like they're going through a series of planned maneuvers, whereas New Japan it just looks like we're gonna go out here and we're gonna punch each other in the face.
No, it's so true. Like, I go through phases in wrestling, and I'm 37 now, so like, I still go through phases of what I like at a certain time. And, you know, I tell everybody, if you want to watch wrestling, don't watch the WWE. Watch Ring of Honor and watch New Japan. Like, that's what you watch. If you want the glitz and the glamour of wrestling, with a little wrestling sprinkled in, watch the WWE. Right now, like, my son, he's 4 years old, he loves the WWE, so I watch a lot of WWE. And don't really watch New Japan anymore. But when I do catch New Japan, it's always like, wow, that's really, really cool. But I'm a big fan of Ishii. Like, he's the guy I want to watch because he's the guy that makes it look real over there. You know, like, I appreciate everything that the Elite do and the Bullet Club do. Like, those guys are awesome, and they're making a bajillion dollars in wrestling, and that's so great. But I want freaks. Like, Ishii and Minoru Suzuki are freaks to me, and I love that.
There is nothing more real than watching Ishii and Suzuki get into a fight with each other and start slapping each other in the face. They don't hold back.
No, and they're the two, like, if Ishii did that to a lot of other guys, people would complain about it, like, oh, he was stiffing them, and he was, you know, like, he wasn't safe with them. But you could do that to Suzuki, and I will be the most entertained. Like, my favorite
Suzuki
wrestling...
will do the bring it on motion. I'll be like, give me more.
Yes!
Seconds.
Yes, like, my favorite wrestling move is a headbutt. Like, I love a headbutt. Like, a
That's
good...
why you like Ishii.
Yes, I love them. Love it. But there are, you know, like, I think Juice Robinson in the next few years is going to be such a big star. You know, so I always appreciate getting to see him over there. You know, like, New Japan is awesome, and what they're doing, like, they got me wanting to see a wrestling match with, earlier this year, Jericho Omega. Like, I wanted to see that, so I stayed up and watched it. Like, it was amazing. So, you know, like, it's great wrestling. Then there are times where I don't want to watch great wrestling. I want to watch WWE, which will give me a 3-star match with all of these smoke and mirrors, which I love. I love smoke and mirrors. You know, so they'll give me that, and I will totally appreciate it and just be so happy watching Big E grind and do his thing. Like, I love that.
I guess I'm the guy on the podcast who splits the difference between all of us, because as much as I do appreciate the reality and the real feeling of New Japan Pro Wrestling, I do still like the smoke and mirrors. I have not totally given up on it. It just frustrates me when they do a 3-hour show and give me so little entertainment. Entertainment is the E in their name. It's like, could you be a little more entertaining? I know you have all this production value. I know you have all the smoke and mirrors, but just entertain me a little more if I'm going to sit through a 3-hour show.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, but they're not trying to entertain you. They're trying to entertain people who are not wrestling fans, which sounds really, really crazy, but they've already got your money. Like, that $9.99 is in their pocket every month, just like it is for me. I am not the WWE's audience. I am the addict that's going to keep going back to that crack house. They want all the new customers at that crack house, so they're going to give you food fights. They're going to give you this, you know, train wreck of TV, and, you know, they're going to get more viewers. Like, their business is incredible. And we're just going to keep tuning in every week because I know that I'm going to get to see Daniel Bryan wrestle, and that makes me happy, and that's my fix.
Yeah, that is how they keep you going, is seeing Daniel Bryan and Samoa Joe and Bobby Roode and the guys that you like that you know are great wrestlers. You keep coming back for them even if you don't get all of what you want.
Yeah. Yep. I'm going to watch no matter what, and they know that. They know that every Monday night at 8:15 I will start watching Raw, and I'm going to be there no matter what. I am addicted. And they want my son to be addicted with me as well. That way they, when I go to a show now I have to buy t-shirts, and now I have to buy all of this, he wanted that New Day unicorn thing, and I'm like, no, I'm not buying you a dildo for your head. It's not happening.
Well, if anybody is selling gimmicks, it's definitely the New Day, but I do want to mention the word gimmick here in specific because of the One Gimmick World Podcast Network. Tell everybody a little more about that.
Oh my god, it's going to be the thing that gets me blackballed from wrestling. So I do a podcast with Vito Tomaselli, who's an old Midwest worker, and then Ben Jordan, who did some commentary and some booking out in Chicago as well. He now lives in Texas. Vito lives in Chicago, and they were doing this podcast, and I would always troll them on the internet. No, you're 100% wrong. WWE is awesome. I love The Big Show. I love Kane. I love Mark Henry. Mark Henry is, in the last 5 years, probably my favorite wrestler in the last 5 years. I love Mark Henry. And they would just say how much he sucks, and we would just go back and forth, and we're friends. Why don't you jump on the podcast with us and give your opinion? And I can give a completely different opinion than the bitterness that is Ben and Vito. I am not bitter to anything in wrestling. I still work the indies. So they get really cool exclusives. I was standing 2 feet away from Just Incredible's meltdown. I was the booker that night when he did that. So they get the inside story on those podcasts of everything that's going on that I'm actually seeing. So, it's making for very interesting podcast. I don't know if it's good. People say it is. I think that I am brutally honest with everything, so I'm just going to, have this diarrhea of the mouth and take the consequences later when I get into the locker room and have to look these guys in the face.
Well, if you're going to call it that, I'm just going to not disagree with you, because it was your diarrhea of the mouth that drew me to you in the first place. I was like, man, this guy can talk some shit. I need to interview him.
Well, thank you. It's a gift. I catch myself doing it, even when I shouldn't be, to my wife, and that just gets me punched in the face. But yeah, I look at it, I guess, as a gift. I always want to have a verbal confrontation, or I'll be the first guy. If you're a Republican on the internet, I am automatically a Democrat. If you're a Democrat, I'm automatically a Republican, just to see if you can argue, and it keeps me on my toes. And then hopefully I lose, so that way I can stop typing. And I just love verbal, educated confrontation with anyone, and I love to talk crap. I just love it.
See, I said this exact thing about Colby Covington when I talked about mixed martial arts on my other podcast, Glove Up or Shut Up. I said people do not understand right now that whatever you are for, he's against, and whatever you are against, he is for. He is the biggest gimmick in mixed martial arts right now, because everything he's saying is specifically designed to piss people off.
Yes! And that right there makes you want to see him get his ass kicked. No matter what, you are going to buy a ticket or a pay-per-view to see him get beat up. And it's a talent. I felt really bad because I was doing it to an old wrestler, Rockin' Randy, who's a big Trump supporter and, stuck in his ways on wrestling should be like it was in 1988. And here I am, I'm in a mood one night, and I don't drink, I don't do anything, so this is always me. So I just start posting on his post, and he is going off, calling me a piece of shit, and I'm just yeah, I keep on going, until this guy who, gave me one of my first bookings ends up blocking me on Facebook just because I'm like, just fucking with them. And I think that I'm fucking with you. Like, you should know that the stuff I'm saying, no normal human being would never believe that, what I'm saying, but this guy did, and, it was insane.
I guess you got a little too much heat with somebody on that one, but.
Stevie, can I ask a question real quick?
Go right ahead, Will. Go ahead.
So I was going to ask this. Has there ever been a moment, whether you're in the ring or you're mainly in the ring? Let's just keep it like, at a show or whatever. You're at a show, you're in gimmick and stuff, and something happens or you say something and you're like, and you realize like, oh shit, that was way too, like, I might have taken that a little too far the way I planned it. Like, has there ever been a moment where you're like, okay, like, that was too much, and I may need to make apologies and make amends when this is all over with?
No, like, normally, if I'm in a promo, I know that I'm coming out on the losing end, no matter what I do. So I have to make myself lose, and I have to back down at some point. So if there is something, like, a little sketchy, I'll actually ask permission first. And say, hey, do you mind if I say this? And the answer is always yes. And then there are times I don't even say it because I'm like, no, that may offend this person in the crowd that's going through this. A great example up in Limitless, the guys that I'm working with up there, they lost a match to 3 girls, and what I wanted to say was, if I were your manager, you would have never taken this match because if you win, all you did was beat 3 girls. If you lose, well, you just lost to 3 girls. Maybe you should just stay home. And then the more I think of it, the more, the only thing I'm doing is shitting on the 3 girls. So I just, didn't say that at all. Even though everybody was totally cool with me saying it, I'm like, yeah, I get out there, I'm like, no, let's change that up and let's do it on the fly, and whatever comes to my head, I'll say. But, you gotta be a professional out there, and the last thing I want to do is piss off a guy who in 3 months I'm giving my body to, who can just break my neck or punch me in the face. So I've got to protect my body and my business.
Well, what about fans? As far as fans go, you ever like shoot a line off or throw a one-liner at a fan, and you're like, okay, because I've done that before, where like somebody may have said something and it just caught me, and before I could even think, it was like verbal diarrhea, and I said it, and then I was like, oh shit.
Yeah,
too much.
That it has happened a few times. Like, one thing I don't do is like, you don't call the fat girl fat, like stuff like that. But there are guys in the crowd that they want to be the asshole and say stuff. So one thing I normally do is, oh, you want to be a part of the show, and I'll start talking down to them, and then whatever I say, and it has gotten ugly a few times. So, it definitely has happened, and I've had fans, attack me. I had one dude jump in the ring, and I caught him out of the corner of my eye, and thank God I kicked him as hard as I could, and, everybody was there to pull him out of the ring, but, there have been times where people have wanted to kick my ass.
Joey, do you remember a guy from the Ted Petty Invitational shows when I was going to those? Do you remember a guy named Trick Davis?
Yeah, I know Trick Davis. Trick Davis hates me for some reason. I don't know what I did to him.
Well, he actually did the opposite of hating me, because I was getting into the show so much that night, I was razzing him and I was yelling stuff at him. So to get heat with me, he came over and sat down next to me and gave me a hug.
That sounds like Trick. Like, he wouldn't know what to do. I'm just going to hug him and make him like me. Yeah. That definitely sounds like Trick. I don't know why, like, I don't know if Trick hates me or not. But yeah, I'm sure he does, because, I'm not the nicest person, so, I'm sure, but yeah, like, I could definitely see Trick doing that.
Well, speaking of not being a nice person, I know a recent topic on the One Gimmick World podcast was Enzo Amore's rap. So, if you want to be not a nice person, feel free to say anything about Enzo's rap right here and now.
Oh my God, like, don't rap anymore. Like, you're way better at wrestling than you are at rapping.
And he wasn't that good at wrestling to begin with.
No, like, he was good at like, he was good on the mic. I love Enzo Amore on the mic. But, yeah, like, I don't know, and then I hear he wants $6,000 for an indie booking. I'm like, yeah, not for me, man. Like, it's not happening. But yeah, like, he is that was, I like Eazy-E, like, that's my favorite rapper, so, like, that's the rap that I like, and then, you know, and Nelly, of course, Nelly's the greatest rapper of all time, so.
What about Digital Underground?
See, Digital Underground was...
Joey and Sidney had me thinking about Shock G and Humpty Hump.
See, Digital Underground was a little too hokey for me, like, they were too happy. I wanted anger in all of my music because I was that ass that listened to, like, I was listening to metal and rap and I didn't know what I was, like, I was just me, like, that was it, and I liked what I liked, so, you know, but yeah, like, I'm a huge Eazy-E fan to this day, you know, and Enzo is definitely not Eazy-E, like, not even close to being on that level. He's not even MC Ran right now. Like, he's just...
He's not even the Arabian Prince.
No.
First of all, hold on. First of all, like, even Eazy-E didn't even write his own lyrics. Like, I think
Ice Cube, rest of rhymes, did I say? That's the most famous Eazy-E line
write
ever.
His own rhyme.
Yeah,
And Nelly can never be named. You can never find anybody who would say Nelly is an angry, aggressive rapper.
No. Nelly's just the greatest rapper of all time. Country Grammar is the soundtrack of my life. Like, I'll be walking around the office at work. Like, I work for a major company, and I'll just start walking around, hot shit, and, you know, anytime somebody mentions North Carolina, I immediately, without missing a beat, take your shirt off. Like, that's... You know, and I'm in there with a bunch of suits and everything else, and yeah, North Carolina, take your shirt off.
North Carolina, come on and raise up.
Yep. So no, I love Nelly. Like it started as a running joke until like I had to really get into the joke and know some Nelly songs. So I'm like, oh shit, now I know like every Nelly song that there is.
And I would dispute that he's not necessarily an angry rapper because that song, he says, going down, down, baby, yo street in a Range Rover, street sweeper, baby, cocked, ready to let it go. He's talking about killing people.
He is, with a smile on his face.
Well, that's a good quality for professional wrestling. I'm saying I'm going to kill you and I'm smiling at you while I'm doing it. So there are lessons to be learned from Nelly.
Yes, there are. Nelly should open a wrestling school on how to be a babyface.
Indeed. All right, Joey, I know our time grows short, but I want you to go ahead and plug everything, your social media, Limitless Wrestling, Chikara, all the places that you can be found.
Yeah, you know, I book for a wrestling company in Connecticut called Blitzkrieg Pro. You could check them out if they're on the internet, I'm pretty sure. Limitless Wrestling, Chikara, Chaotic Wrestling, Top Rope Promotions. Definitely check out Kaiju Attack Wrestling out in Chicago, Freelance Wrestling, AAW, like, I'm always popping up in weird places. Shimmer, like, definitely check out Shimmer if you like girls wrestling, because they're doing all of that. I am on Twitter at the Joey Eastman. Also, you could find my counterpart, Sidney Bacabella, on Twitter at @SBacabella. If you tweet to him, he will insult you. So, you know, he's a jerk. And, you know, yeah, just, you know, go out to every indie show that you can. Like, if you're listening to this and there's like some bad wrestling show in the area that you are like, I don't want to go to that, you're probably going to see really bad wrestling and laugh at it. So go and see that too. Like, enjoy yourself, have fun, put some money in these guys' pockets.
Or if you're going to a show that William Huckabee is on, you'll see good wrestling.
Yes.
I wasn't even gonna say anything because like I was just gonna let Joey like bury himself, and then I was gonna like message him after the show and be like, you know, Joey, I've messaged you like 6 times in the past like 4 years, but I've never got a response. So just
at Blitzkrieg,
just tell me I'm garbage. Yes, and just tell me I'm garbage.
Yep. No, here's the deal about that, because I get into this with Eric Cannon all the time. So every day I get like 40 to 50 messages from guys wanting to work, and they're doing the Bob Evans thing, and I yell at Bob Evans about this all the time, because he's the guy that told everybody, message every promoter and do everything. Yeah, and like, I just don't have time to like message everyone back. So I'm sorry, Jeremy Leary is the promoter, he's cheap, he will not pay trans for you to come up from North Carolina, and that, I'll say it right here on the air, on live, Jeremy Leary is so cheap and won't pay trans. That's my partner. Like, that's the guy. Like, you can imagine if I hate you, how I'm going to bury you. Like, that's the guy I really like.
Like, this is my buddy. He's cheap as shit. He's not gonna pay for your training. Like, I don't even know if he's gonna pay. Like, I don't even know if he's gonna cover your fee. Like, we might give you like 2 hot dogs.
Seriously,
and
like,
soda.
one time I asked Jeremy Leary for $50. He said $30. What do you need $25 for?
Well, I hope Vance Cooley isn't cheap, because you mentioned Kaiju Attack Wrestling and you introduced me to him, and I am a new fan of Kaiju Attack because you made that connection between the two of us.
Yeah, Vance is actually one of the guys that helped me break in the business. So he was on that show, my very first show, and he was actually one of the guys that were like, let him do it. And then they took me in the car and got me ring announcing all over the Midwest. So I'm forever indebted to Vance. Like, he's an idiot a lot of times. Like, he's kind of an ass. Like, he steals everything, like the beard spot and everything else. Like, you know what though? I am indebted to him because of what he did for me 15 years ago. I can introduce you guys 15 years later and spread the word of Kaiju to, the masses.
That's awesome. I'm glad you were able to make that connection, and I'm glad we were able to reconnect as well. Thank you so much for coming on, Joey. We got to do this again without letting another 5 years go by. It's got to be sooner than that.
Anytime, Steve. Like, you guys just message me, give me a little bit of notice. I will hop on the computer and, we will chat. So I am all about it.
All right. Thank you so much, Joey. We will do that again really soon, and have a great rest of your night, and all the best to you and your family.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to bed, guys. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
All right. Bye.
That was Joey Eastman right here on Thursday Night AMP. A great interview, a really fun guy, and a longtime indie pro wrestling veteran. So it's our pleasure to have him on the show. But I know we still have to talk about Dominion. We might not get the Money in the Bank, but I don't think anybody's going to complain if we don't.
Fuck Money in the Bank.
Bam. What Jason said.
All right, with Dominion, I'm going to just say this right off the top to get it out there. It's the Gaijin takeover. They have put so many Americans over in one weekend, I almost don't know what to say about it.
Well, I'll say this. This was the second best Dominion that I've seen going back. The best one is definitely when they brought it back in 2015. But top to bottom, every match, this was a good solid second in terms of Dominions.
Well, if it is the best Dominion ever, it probably had the best match on a Dominion card ever when you consider the 70 minutes
I don't know. Yeah, it comes close. Yeah, you had AJ Styles versus Okada on Dominion 2015, so you're not losing much there.
I'm going to put it out there. If you won't say it, I will. I'll say that the fourth Omega Okada match is the greatest match I've ever seen.
I'll put it this way. It got me interested again. The match itself made me want Kenny Omega to win, because prior to that, I thought the feud had gotten stale. I had kind of lost interest in Kenny Omega. I had lost interest in the feud. I'm like, you know what? We've seen this 3 times. What else is there to see? But after the cheap-ass first fall that Okada got, I'm like, oh, man, it's Roman Reigns Okada here again, and he's going to retain. And it just really got me into wanting Kenny to win. And just the story they told and building up. And it was a great match.
And there were so many stories. Oh, sorry, Will. I'll just say this real quick and you can jump in. There were so many stories told within the match, and one of the stories was that if you get hit with the one-winged angel, you don't get up from that. So any time that Okada would block it, you would think, oh man, it's gonna happen, Okada's gonna retain. And then when he was finally able to get it, it was like, holy shit, maybe he's actually gonna come back and win 2 straight falls.
I will say this. I liked this match better than I liked their match at the G1. I don't think it's the best out of all 4 of their matches. It wasn't, for some strange reason, it wasn't my favorite match on the card. It might have been my 3rd favorite match on the card. My favorite match on the entire Dominion card was actually the IWGP Junior Heavyweight match between Takahashi and Ospreay. Like, that match was kick ass. Like, they took the cruiserweight division, the junior heavyweight division, to an entire brand new level. It was nonstop action, man. I love the story that they told. And then the Jericho, Naito match was completely unexpected.
Brutal.
Yeah, brutal.
Jericho didn't even let Naito get his ring gear off. Just 10 minutes straight. He just pummeled him before the bell even rang.
Well, it couldn't ring because Jericho finally had to throw him into the ring and look at the referee and say, "Ring the fucking bell!"
Definitely. Those two matches, in my opinion, were better than the actual main event. But once again, not taken away from the main event. I think, for me, what really made the main event special was, when Kenny Omega finally hit the one-winged angel for the second fall, I think it was. And, they had the 2-minute break in between, rounds, which was genius to me. And Okada just couldn't get up. And it took everything in him. Like, the 2-minute time was up, and then they went like another 30 seconds. Like, Gator was stalling for time, so he was in the ring for a whole another 30 seconds after that. And then there was another 30 seconds before Okada was even able to, like, actually move and get to his feet. Like, the story they told with Kenny Omega hitting the one-winged angel was beautiful and stuff. But overall, I feel like it was their greatest hits. It's like, okay, we're going to do this from the first match and this, from the second match and this, from the third one, and we're going to put all of our greatest hits in one match and then tell a story and put it in 70 minutes. I think that they had a really good 25-minute match in 70 minutes.
I'm going to agree, but I'm also going to disagree. You're right in that it was definitely their greatest hits, and that's why I liked it so much. It was referencing everything they had done up to this point. That's what great storytelling in professional wrestling should be. When you have a rivalry like this, you should do callbacks to previous matches. You should have spots that you tease. You should have looks that guys exchange. You should have stuff that goes on inside and outside the ring, and they did all of that.
And one thing that I've never seen, the Rainmaker just broke. It just stopped working.
It was finally time. It was finally time for that.
He threw this Rainmaker into Kenny Omega's chest that did nothing. It was just like, oh, Rainmaker does nothing.
Well, after a 720-day, whatever length reign it was, maybe it was time for it to finally not work.
Yeah, after a lot of matches with Okada, it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 Rainmakers to end the match. Mm-hmm. But it was definitely time. It was, I know myself, I was kind of getting tired of Okada's title reign, and I know others were as well, and it was the right time to pull the trigger. They could have even pulled the trigger before, but this wasn't a bad time to do it. If you're going to do it at Wrestle Kingdom or do it at Dominion. Do it at one of the two big shows.
I'll throw out a statistic really quick because Arya Whitner sent this to me, and I think it's a pretty telling fact. Okada's reign as the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion was 720 days. In that time, we had 8 WWE title changes, 4 Universal title changes, 7 Intercontinental title changes, 11 Raw Women's title changes, 10 Raw Tag Team title changes, 10 Cruiserweight Tag Team title changes. Now, I'll just stop there because he's got a whole list and it goes on and on and on and on and on. But the point is, there have been hundreds and hundreds of title changes, and in all that time, the IWGP Heavyweight title only changed hands once, from Okada to Omega. And that should tell you why it is the most prestigious title in wrestling right now.
I will also say, I haven't always been, I know I've said this on this podcast, that I like Michael Elgin in America and not so much in New Japan. But that triple threat match for the Never Openweight Championship was spectacular. I feel like that was Elgin's best match to date. And if they're not going to put Juice Robinson in there with, for the IWGP US title, I would love to see Juice and Michael Elgin go at it for the Never Openweight title, because that match was just, that triple threat was really, really good.
One of my favorite spots in the entire show, even, when he did the double buckle bomb and stacked everybody up in the corner. It's like, nope, I'm just going to bomb you into the other guy. Let's just stack everybody up like cordwood.
Yes, and of course that match had my homeboy Tai Chi in there, who put Michael Elgin over amazingly.
And
you know what I'm saying? And
This is where Jason and I got into the debate because I said, you know what? The longer I watch Tai Chi, the more I'm on Will's side of this argument because he is that just little bit of sports entertainment in New Japan. Like, I wouldn't want all the guys to be Tai Chi, but I want one Tai Chi, and he's enough for me.
I've got Yano. I don't need a Tai Chi.
Oh, Jason, come on. Once again, you have to admit that match would have just been between Goto and Michael Elgin. It wouldn't have been half as entertaining or half as good without Tai Chi.
And I gotta say, even if you don't like any of the guys in that match, you can't tell anything to that crowd at Osaka Joe Hall because they were very into it. They were very loud and very vocal during that match.
It was a garbage match and a garbage title.
Oh, come on, Jason.
Sorry, Jason. You're outvoted on this one, 2-1.
Yeah, that was a good fucking match. Come on, Jason. You have to give all three of those guys credit.
Well, if he doesn't, two of the three of us still do.
Okay, yeah, I would say it was better than Finley and Robinson versus Yoshihashi and Jay White. I'll give it that.
Yes, it was.
But it wasn't better than Hiromu and Will Ospreay, because holy fucking shit.
No, it really wasn't. Hiromu and Will Ospreay, and they even did manage to sneak in that sunset flip powerbomb spot.
I think one of my favorite spots wasn't that. It was right at the beginning when Hiromu did this huge run down the ramp and then flew into Will Ospreay. That was an amazing spot.
I think you have that backwards. Ospreay did the dive.
Oh, sorry. The other way around. You know what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah, that match actually is on my short list of match of the years so far. Like, that match, in my opinion, was my favorite match in this Dominion card. One of my top favorite matches so far this year in all of professional wrestling. Like, those guys kicked butt. And I know as much as we talk junk about the Young Bucks, IWGP heavyweight title match and stuff, that was actually really good as well. I was not displeased by the way that they beat, Evil and Sonata.
No, it's not the team I wanted to win, but I was okay with it because I was entertained by the match. It's like, this isn't what I wanted, but it's what I got, and at the same time, it was good, so I can't hate.
I had the same sentiment with Chris Jericho winning the title. It was kind of like, well, that's not how I would have booked it. That's not how I wanted it to go down, but it was a good match.
Mm-hmm. And it's just weird to me that the biggest, not just biggest in Japan, but arguably biggest promotion outside of WWE has more North American guys as champions right now than they do Native Son champions.
It doesn't really matter if those guys are over with the crowd.
No, of course not. They're treated like Japanese wrestlers by the Japanese fans.
If they can wrestle a Japanese style, which they can, which is exactly why I would cancel New Japan World if Cody were to win the title.
And you keep talking about that, but I don't think you have to worry about that. That's not going to happen.
He's going to be the ROH/NWA World Heavyweight Champion, okay? Like, that's all you have to worry about.
He can spend his time in NWA and get the hell out of New Japan.
The only thing that really disappointed me about the Intercontinental match was that, to me, it looked like Jericho was kind of out of shape. And I know for me, standing as a fat guy, I shouldn't body shame anybody, but you're used to Jericho looking a certain way, coming in at a certain, he's always in shape. And he just did not look, I think that's the worst physically that I've ever seen Jericho in 20 years, as far as like his physical appearance and actually being able to keep up in the ring. There was a couple of times, I think there was one spot in particular where Naito went for Destino and Jericho just couldn't, I think he ran out of gas at one point. And you could see the frustration on Naito's face where he's just like, all right, get it together, superstar. Like,
what was interesting with this too was to see Jericho try to figure out how to sell a Destino.
Yeah, exactly. But
because he hasn't worked Naito before, and he was just like, how do I say? Oh, okay, I'll do it this way.
Yeah, you could just see the frustration on Naito's face when they botched that first one.
Yeah. The big disappointment of the whole show to me wasn't that, though. The whole disappointment to me was Yo and Sho not winning the junior heavyweight tag titles.
Yeah, that one was a little frustrating, although I'm given to understand that the reception to that match within certain circles of New Japan and outside of it is that they're looking at Sho and Yo as single stars, and maybe they're not going to put them back together as champions in the tag division.
Big mistake.
A super huge mistake. Jesus. Come on, Gato. Don't get all Vince McMahon on us, man. Start breaking up great.
Why don't you make goddamn Kanemaru a single star and get him out of the tag division?
Because he's not a star.
Well, make him a singles wrestler and send him back to Noah.
How about we just send him back to Noah and we trade him for Marufuji or something? How about that?
Gato can head back over. Well,
yes,
he's not
please,
in Noah, but Gato can go over to Noah.
Please make that happen. I want Mauro the Butcher. I'll make that trade right now.
Tai Chi can go back to Noah.
Whoa.
We're keeping Tai Chi. You're outvoted again.
Yeah, you're outvoted on that one, Jason. Come on. Look, Jason, can you at least say
Tongaloa can go to Noah?
No, Tongaloa can go to WWE and kill everyone.
Yeah, I will agree with that. But, I mean, all right, so here's my question for you guys. Now that Kenny Omega is the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, does that mean that New Japan is ready to be a global player now? What does that say for New Japan and the world of professional wrestling in general now?
I'm going to answer your question with a question. And the question, the little rider question I'm going to tack on to you is, what does this mean for the G1? Because as it stands now, Kenny Omega is set to main event the Tokyo Dome. The winner of the G1 Climax is going to face him. And I see two front runners possibly winning the G1, but I can only see two people coming out. And I'll let you guys.
Can I answer that question for you?
Yeah.
I think the front runners, if you're thinking the way I'm thinking, have to be Kota Ibushi and Tetsuya Naito.
I was thinking Tetsuya Naito number 1, and then I was thinking Okada at number 2. Ibushi is kind of a wild card. Maybe if he were to not be a freelancer and sign a full-time New Japan deal, then you could do the Kota Ibushi thing at Wrestle Kingdom. The interesting thing becomes, if Okada is not in the main event at Wrestle Kingdom, what do you have him doing at Wrestle Kingdom?
I'll let Will answer that.
You know, I never thought about that. I would say that we would not see Okada Omega 5.
I hope not. Yeah, we've seen that enough of that for now.
I'm thinking we're going to see another Tanahashi Okada maybe in the semi-main. But I think that as far as the G1 goes, I think we're going to see a Bullet Club. Maybe we might see a Bullet Club match at Wrestle Kingdom and stuff. Do you think, especially with his tweet, that Tama Tonga, his tweet and stuff right after Kenny Omega won the IWGP Championship, do you think that we might see Tama Tonga versus Kenny Omega for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship?
No.
I'd like to see it, but I don't think Tama Tonga is a big enough name and a big enough draw to put asses in seats at Wrestle Kingdom.
And see, that's why I say it's got to either be Naito or Ibushi. I know that Ibushi is still a freelancer and not full-time with New Japan, and they might not want to pull the trigger on that, but the Golden Lovers turning on each other would be a hell of a story, and Naito getting his title back after being screwed so many times by beating Omega would also be a hell of a story.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Naito, personally. That was my number 1 choice. I can see him winning. Or, I mean, if you really want to go a different way, you could have Kenny Omega win the G1 and pick Naito.
That would be good. I wouldn't mind that either.
I definitely can't disagree with that. But I just want to know, my question was, does this mean now that, WWE, now that New Japan has Kenny Omega, as their champion, and, you keep hearing these rumors about WWE being interested in Omega and the Bucks and stuff. And then we just had this crazy New Day Elite match at E3 for Street Fighter and stuff. If you're Vince McMahon and Triple H, do you start getting worried yet? Especially with the fact that All In just booked, they just sold out a 10,000 seat arena in Chicago, and you still have tickets for sale right before, Money in the Bank and stuff in the same city. New Japan sold out a 12,000 seat arena in Long Beach or in California once again. When does WWE get worried, and do we now solidly say that New Japan is the number 2 wrestling company in the world, hands down, bar none?
Well, Will, I can answer that question in multiple ways. I've got to first address the fact that the New Day and the Elite had their battle at E3, which the New Day won, but the Elite got the last laugh when Kenny Omega had a one-on-one Street Fighter V match at the very end, and the loser had to eat hot peppers. So, Xavier Woods, you are snacking on some habaneros tonight. But that's not all bad, because in the same day, we also learned that Xavier Woods is going to be a playable character. If you like Bomberman games and you like the New Day, Xavier Woods is in Super Bomberman R. You're going to want to check that out. But, more to the point of what you were asking, should WWE get worried? I say no, because right now they are raking in billions of dollars in television deals. So even if New Japan rises up even further than they have already risen, and they have risen a lot because they have a nice subscriber base outside of Japan, which is impressive considering that it's not the easiest thing to do to subscribe to New Japan World when most of the site is in Japanese and you have to use Google Translate or you have to use a Chrome browser that will translate it automatically for you, and yet they've got tens of thousands of subscribers already outside of Japan to the point where they have English language commentary as an option now on every major show. So I don't think WWE is worried in that respect, but they are looking to raid talent. And the reason that they're promoting the New Day versus the Elite on WWE's website, and the reason they unearthed a Kenny Omega match from Deep South Wrestling and put it on the network in their Hidden Gems collection, is their way of sending a message saying, we're watching, and if your deal comes up, we've got billions of dollars in TV money now. We can afford to pay you more than New Japan. We're coming for you.
Were you about to say something, Jason? I don't know if you're about to say something or not.
No, I don't know. I don't think. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think it would be a pay cut. I mean, WWE would have to throw tons and tons of money at the Young Bucks to get them there because the Young Bucks get to dictate their schedule, they get to dictate their own style, and more importantly, they dictate their merchandise.
All of that is true, but
this would not be the case in WWE.
I know that, but when you talk about throwing money, WWE has got some serious money to throw around right now. They've got more money than ever.
Yeah, but I think the Young Bucks would do well to look at what Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows are doing in WWE and think, this could be us.
That is true.
There is precedent for bringing over New Japan tag teams, and you gotta look no further than that.
All right. Well, we are definitely running up on time here, so before I wrap it up, I want to again plug the Joey Eastman on Twitter and onegimmickworld.podbean.com to hear his podcast. But I know we've got some other cheap plugs too, and I'm going to let you guys get to those in a minute, but I want to say, just because for the record it is in the description of tonight's show, Money in the Bank 2018 takes place on June 17th in Chicago, and it's going to have 2 ladder matches. Not that anybody on this show cares about it, but it is happening. So if you want to see Ember, Charlotte, Alexa, Becky, Natalya, Lana, Naomi, Sasha in one, and you want to see Braun, Finn, Miz, Rusev, Bobby, Kevin, Samoa, and one member of the New Day to be determined, you can watch those 2 ladder matches. Also on the card, AJ versus Shinsuke, Last Man Standing, Nia Jax, Ronda Rousey for the Raw Women's title, Carmella versus Asuka for the SmackDown Women's title, the Bludgeon Brothers versus Gallows and Anderson, who were just mentioned, and Seth Rollins versus Elias. Now, the only title change that I'm sure of is Elias will probably beat Seth Rollins, because they want everybody to walk with Elias. Any other thoughts, guys, before we give your plugs?
There's gonna be another fuck finish in AJ versus Shinsuke.
Probably. Will?
I don't really care. Actually, the only thing I care about is the women's Money in the Bank ladder match, because I think that, depending on who wins the ladder match depends on what happens in the, Ronda Rousey Nia Jax match. I think that, I actually feel like Alexa Bliss is going to win, and she's going to cash in Sunday night against the winner of that match. That's about the only thing I really care about, unfortunately.
Well, one theory that's out there that you've kind of alluded to is that Stephanie McMahon will force the winner of the Money in the Bank women's match to cash in if Ronda Rousey wins and take the title off her to screw Ronda.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, but that would definitely play into Alexa Bliss's character anyway. So I see her more as like, the female version of Edge as the ultimate opportunist. And if they put her in that role, I'm completely totally fine with that. Like I said, I'm only watching because I will watch those 2 matches, and that's about it, because I know some kind of way they're going to have a fuck finish on the AJ Nakamura match. They're not going to put Elias over. Because unlike Seth Rollins, he doesn't need the title to be over. They're definitely not going to put Braun Strowman over. So why else would I watch? And Cedric's not on the show, so why else would I watch?
Well, they need to put more stuff on the pre-show then. He might get on there somehow, some way as a pre-show match.
Oh, yay. Yay.
I know, that's not the spotlight you want for him, and neither is it mine. But anyway, give some cheap plugs as we wrap it up.
Well, as usual, you can catch me every week on this network with Mika Villas and CW Smith for the Wrestling Nerdcast. Just had a great interview this past week with former AIWF Cruiserweight Champion Matt Gilbert, aka the Barefoot Badass. Check me out on social media. YouTube, check me out on YouTube. I've uploaded a bunch of matches from the last year and stuff that I finally, can upload all of my stuff in a timely manner. This weekend, actually, I'm only doing one show this weekend. Saturday, I will be in Bland, Virginia for the Bland County, Relay for Life. It's a benefit show. So, for Relay for Life, I will be in a chain match against, Drake Tungsten. Hopefully I won't be all beat up and bruised up. So there you go.
All right, Jason, what do you got?
I'm going to plug Canadian Football League again. The regular season is on right now, and shout out to Jordan Garber up there in Winnipeg, where it is pouring so hard that there is a rain delay in the game between Winnipeg and Edmonton right now. So definitely check out the CFL. You can find them on the ESPN website. You can also go to Reddit, search for CFL streams, find that. Watch yourself some non-fascist football. Do not watch Money in the Bank. I will anti-plug that. Just kayfabe it and skip it. It's not going to be worth it. I'll plug my cooking blog at veggiebending.wordpress.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Great Sudoku.
And once again, follow the Joey Eastman at the Joey Eastman, and follow the site at Angry Marks. Thank you for listening to Thursday Night AMP, and shout-outs to our loyal listeners like Jonathan Courtwright, Bionic Iguana, Ryan Taylor, Ed Francis, so many more. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again in 7 days. Good night, everybody.